Welcome back to Stab the Dragon Productions for episode number 95 as we continue the Texas Rye Whiskey Tournament with our fourth contest, pairing up Devil's River Rye Whiskey out of San Antonio with Herman Marshall Rye Whiskey. And this is a Total Wine single barrel reserve, so it's not your standard issue Herman Marshall. And Herman Marshall's out of, well, it could be Garland, Texas is where they started, but I think they've moved to Wylie or planning on moving to Wylie. So anyway, it's going to be these two competing against each other. This will be the fourth contest, but in our first matchup, we had Acre Texas Rye at 80 proof as the favored against Blackland 83 proof, and Blackland came from behind for a win. Our second matchup was Lockwood Rye versus Oakeneden Rye and Spire, both fighting at 90 proof. The Oakeneden was the favorite, but again it ended up losing to the underdog Lockwood. Last week we had Oakeneden Rye, the Oakeneden Rye and Rar IPA, finished in with a beer stave, versus Lead Slingers fighting Spirit Rye coming out of Oklahoma. Both of those were 90 proof. This time, the Lead Slingers, which was favored, did prevail. The trend of winning seems to be linked to a clear taste of rye spice combined with price and availability as the tiebreaker. So far, all the whiskeys in the competition have been delicious. No bad whiskeys in the bunch at all. Now, for these two, just the facts. The Devil's River Rye is a new whiskey for which I have no prior review. I did, several years ago, sample the Devil's River Bourbon. And, man, how long ago was that? 3 or 4 years ago? And I didn't much care for it. But the rye is different. You know, it's a rye. And I've now sampled it just the other day when I bought it. And it's pretty darn good. So I don't have an official review on that one on file. But so we're doing this one kind of cold turkey. The Herman Marshall, on the other hand, I do have a review for. And you can go back in Stab Dragon Productions and find that one. I think it's from June of 2022 maybe. But with Devil's River Rye, their distillery is in downtown San Antonio, Texas. They use water from the Devil's River, which is a spring-fed river that cuts through the limestone of southwest Texas. This rye whiskey comes in at 90 proof, and the bottle does not say distilled in Texas, however. It says produced. Why do distilleries do that? I am 95% sure that this whiskey is distilled in San Antonio, but the wording is odd, and I've run across this a time or two. Now, sometimes whiskey companies do that, and then later on in the fine print you find distilled in Kentucky or whatever. Everything I've researched about Devil's River, I haven't called them on the phone, but everything I've researched convinces me that this is actually distilled by Devil's River here in Texas. There's no mash bill available, but it does say they use rye, corn, and barley, and of course water from the Devil's River, along with a proprietary yeast. Sure sounds like it's distilled in Texas, but then again it says aged not less than 23 months in Texas, so it's aged in Texas. But again, it's not labeled grain to glass Texas whiskey by the Texas Whiskey Association. But Devil's River is a member of the Texas Whiskey Association. I checked that. So, I don't know. This whiskey is a little bit of a mysterious critter. The Herman Marshall, on the other hand, it's not listed on the website for the Texas Whiskey Association, so who knows if this is even important. I mean, Herman Marshall was like the first distillery to start up in Dallas. Okay, a Dallas County distillery. After Prohibition, so that's pretty important. Why aren't they in the association? I do not know. And again, Garland, Texas is their home, but for the last year they've been saying they're going to move to Wylie, Texas. You go to the website and you know, check things out. And one place it says Garland, another place says Wylie. So who knows? They do list their mash bill, however, at Herman Marshall. 77 rye, 23 barley, no corn. Now, here's another complication. In 2021, Herman Marshall was sold to Dry County Distillery. So now both names are on the labels and the bottles have changed. This is the old bottle. This is a flask style bottle. The new bottles are round and short round squatty bottles, okay? And so the bottles have changed. The labels changed somewhat. Actually, it's changed a lot. Doesn't look anything like this now. But so anyway, if you find Herman Marshall in the stores, it's going to be also listed as Dry County, I think. So this rye, they do say at the website, is local when they can, and it's aged 4 to 6 years in 53-gallon barrels. Now, I've tasted this Herman Marshall Rye. If it is aged 4 to 6 years, it is aged in a climate-controlled warehouse. There is no way this rye was aged in the heat of Texas, okay? So I'm convinced it's climate controlled. And there's nothing wrong with that, okay? It just gives it a totally different thing. I mean, Texas whiskeys that are aged in climate have a very deep barrel char to the taste, right? It's almost smoky. All Texas whiskeys are smoky if they're really aged in the heat of Texas. So this one I'm pretty sure is climate controlled, and that's fine. This is a 92 proof versus the 90 proof Devil's River. Previous ratings, again, Devil's River is unrated, unreviewed, but Herman Marshall I scored last June of 2022 as an 88 and an A-. That's a pretty good score for me. Cost and availability. Devil's River, I paid $29.99 at Total Wine here in February of 2023. And Specs has it listed for $27.88. Goody Goody has it listed for $29.59, but they're out of stock. I don't think I've ever seen this at Goody Goody. The Herman Marshall, on the other hand, again, it's a store select single barrel reserve, so it's going to be a little bit more. $46.99 at Goody. In Specs, it was not available. $40.99 at Total Wine. So a big price differential, you know, $10 difference, $11 difference in the prices. So that's a good size differential. So now let's get on to comparing these two whiskeys. If I hold these up, in my left hand on the right, you'll notice it's lighter colored. That's the Devil's River that it's aged for less than 2 years, or about 2 years. In my right hand on your left is the Herman Marshall, and that's aged 4 to 6 years, and it is obviously darker, but let me just tell you that the color again reveals that this was in a climate controlled warehouse, not out in the Texas sun. So Devil's River, Herman Marshall, advantage color wise goes to the Herman Marshall. Now let's go to the nose. Devil's River on the nose. It's a noticeable nose. A little bit of rye spice, sweetness. Not a spectacular nose, although I will say that when I first opened the bottle the other day, that was a fantastic nose. So why is the nose not as fantastic today? I'm not sure. Herman Marshall on the nose. Less of a nose. Very, very little nose. just a hint of rye spice there on the nose. So neither has a strong nose, but I'm going to give the advantage, I think. And that's close. I'm going to give the advantage to Herman Marshall on the nose. So now let's go to the tasting. Start with the Devil's River. That's almost a bourbon. Wow. I'm getting cinnamon. Sweetness, like it's not overly sweet. I mean, it's gently sweet. Okay, but that absolutely tasted like a bourbon. Don't get me wrong, that's delicious. It's fairly simple. It's not going to be complex at all. Just light caramel, cinnamon, and I don't even taste any Texas funk on that. So that as light as that is, and the nose and the taste, I'm going to say they're a climate-controlled warehouse as well. Wow, I'm getting not much rye. This would confuse me as a bourbon. Absolutely. Okay, let me drink some Topo Chico to clear my palate a little bit. Okay, moving on to the Herman Marshall. A little bit of rye spice on the back end of the palate and the finish. Definitely a little bit of a, I mean, it's only 2 points stronger on the proof, but it definitely seems to have a little bit more punch to it. Longer lasting finish. But again, as a rye, this is not real strong on the rye spice. 77% rye though. I think the finish, the rye spice is coming out stronger in this. This is a gentle rye. I mean, you're getting lots of tinglies in a gentle way. Okay, so this is not a throat punch. You know, it's only 92 proof, but man, I've had some 80 proofs that were stronger than this. But so this is a nice, smooth, but I think sometimes with rye you get the peppery notes, and I think that's what I'm getting here. But this is much like a rye coming out of Tennessee or Kentucky or Maryland or somewhere else. This definitely is not aged in the Texas heat. This is a climate-controlled substance here. But don't get me wrong. I mean, it's delicious. It's good. And I think it may be getting more of a rye spice than the Devil's River. A little bit more floral notes, spice notes, definitely. The Devil's River again. This impressed me as being very gentle but bourbon-esque. That is incredibly smooth. There's really no tingle, no pepperiness. Just the faintest hint of rye spice at the back end of the palate and finish. But really, the cinnamon on this is coming out. Yeah, this is very much like a bourbon. So this is just kind of lacking in flavor, I think. Okay, well, Herman Marshall for the win. Herman Marshall. Now, keep in mind, this is a Total Wine single barrel reserve. Batch number 319R is what that says. So, delicious, but very peppery, which is good, which is one of the main reasons I like ryes. Good, strong finish on that one for a 94 or for a 92 proof. But again, the rye flavor is not real pronounced on this. I wonder if my palate's off today. I don't know, because the Devil's River couldn't find the rye hardly. Herman Marshall, it's there, but not real pronounced. Nonetheless, there is nothing wrong with the Devil's River. I mean, it doesn't come across as bad in any way. It's smooth. Yeah, I think if you drank this in a cocktail, it would get lost in the mix. So as a 90 proof, it's incredibly smooth. But just for what I'm looking for in a rye, it's not there. I am looking for that rye spice flavor. And with the Herman Marshall, it was there a little bit, but not a whole lot there either. But nonetheless, it had the peppery notes. So I think that's what carried the day. And when you look at the cost, though, basically a $41 rye versus a $30 rye. Man, is that worth the price difference? I guess. So we'll say Herman Marshall for the win. Next week, let's talk about next week. Coming up, we will do Milam and Green port finished 94 proof versus Still Austin 96.6 proof. That's the competition for next time on Stab the Dragon. So if you drink, don't drive. If you're not 21, you shouldn't be drinking. And let's avoid drunkenness. There's no need for that either. So this is Stab the Dragon, out here.